You are listening to WVEB Truthsharks Radio. Okay, all right, folks. I hope you can hear me. If you are in the show, if you're listening, please let me know if you can hear me. I've been having trouble with getting the show set up. For some reason, my microphone doesn't seem to want to work on my main computer. But just let me know if you can hear me. I'm seeing indication in my uh, my host logo is showing me that I am talking and broadcasting, but we'll see if this applies to the recording. But hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Just to let you all know who I am, my name is Vincent E. Brown. My radio name is Southeast Vince. I get that name from when I was in high school. I used to live in the D.C. area, and Southeast Washington, D.C. was a reputable area. In the D.C. area, that's where, a lot of the gangs and everything, a lot of rough housing and everything went on in the city. And I was a pretty chill type person. I wasn't the kind that would get into kinds of trouble or anything like that. I wasn't gangster or anything by any stretch of the imagination. And someone just, just to make fun, they called me Southeast Vince. And all through my junior year and my junior and senior years in high school, that's what people, you know, called me, was Southeast Vince. Now, over the years, of course, I'd forgotten about that name, and when I started doing talk radio, I decided to use that name again. And in a way, Southeast Vince is kind of true, because the southeastern part of the United States is the southeastern part of the United States is my favorite part of the country to live in. I see you, Fax Porcupine Podcast. Welcome to the show. Tell me, let me know if you can hear me. Just give me a yes or no if you can hear me or not. But I grew up in the Washington D.C. area. I'm originally from Roanoke, Virginia. That's where I was born. In southwestern Virginia, my family basically. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm originally from Roanoke, Virginia. I didn't grow up in that area. My family, my dad was from that area. My mom, she was born about 150 miles away in a place called Bristol, Tennessee. We spent some time in Tacoma, Washington, way across the country, because my dad was in the Air Force. And then we moved to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and that's where I grew up, Washington, Fort Washington, Capitol Heights, Prince George. If you know anything about Prince George's County, that's basically, the area where I grew up. And in 1986, I graduated from high school, and I came down to Durham, North Carolina, which is where I live now. Came down here to go to school. And 1988, I decided to make Durham my permanent home, because I don't like Washington, D.C. It's too urban for me. I have a plethora of bad memories from up there. And that's why I decided to come down here to Durham, North Carolina. And this is the area where the Duke Blue Devils and the Durham Bulls and NC State and UNC is right up the road. The Tar Heels play right up the road. And, I love it here in North Carolina. And I've been here since 1988. That's 37 years, I guess. I got married in 2004. My wife is from Liberia. And we've been married now for a little more than 20 years. And in 1986, not long after I first came down here to go to school, in October 1986, 5 days after my 18th birthday, which is October the 16th, I got born again, became a born again Christian. And I really took my salvation very seriously. I didn't just say, okay, I'm born again and just, living like the devil. I really wanted to do this thing. I really wanted to live this Christian life. It wasn't just something that I took on nominally. I wanted to, live that life and whatever. I went to this church here in Durham, North Carolina. Went there for 26 years, a little more than 25 years, of course. I appreciate that fact, Porcupine. I I went to this church for 26 years. For 3 years, I quit my job to become a full time missionary, and I'll tell you some stories about that. But it was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. I'll tell you that. But I was in a what you call a word faith church, where the name it and claim it, speaking in tongues, and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of church I went to, and the church had an academy. It's a nationally known academy. They say it's the first black-owned academy on the East Coast. I'm not sure how true that is or whatever, but that's what I've heard. And went there for 26 years, whatever. Not long after I got married, I discovered a platform on the internet called Blog Talk Radio. And in 2009, that's where I basically got my start. And from what I know, as of yesterday, Blog Talk Radio is no more. Blog Talk Radio closed its doors. And I said, okay, I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. And you all excuse me if I don't sound refined or anything like that. It was something for me to get a show up and running today. But when I started Blog Talk Radio, I started with a show called Black by Color Only. And the reason why I came up with that name was because being a man who is a Christian, and if you're a true Christian, you want the truth. You want to follow after the truth. And me, I don't see my skin color as something that needs to be. I don't see my skin color as an ideal or something like that. I just see my skin color as something. Hey, this is how I was born. I'm not going to. I don't follow the black narrative that you hear. Liberal, mainstream liberal Black America. The civil rights activists and all that. I don't follow along that. I want to follow the truth. And that's how I come up with the name Truthsharks. Because two things I like is the truth, and I like sharks. I'm a big nerd. I like science and things like that. And growing up, I used to read about sharks and things like that. Had aspirations to be a scientist, but that fell through, and so here I am with you people. And I just say that in jest. But I did Black by Color Only for some years, and then after a while, you dove with sharks. Okay, hey, have at it. Yeah, I think the only time I want to see a shark is if he's behind a big thick plate of glass, like in an aquarium. But anyway, for some time, I continued my show called Black by Color Only. And of course, you meet a lot of interesting characters. I heard all the names. You're a sellout. You're a coon. The most recent name someone gave to me was I'm a black comfort dog for white conservatives. And when it comes to politics, I am not. I might lean conservative. My talk might sound conservative, but I really don't like to identify as a conservative. I like to identify as a Christian. And if you are a true born again, Bible believing Christian, you're going to care about the truth. You don't take your Christianity lightly, and I don't take it lightly. But for some years I did that, and then I was invited to another show. Let's see. Yes, sir. See you soon. Oh, okay. Go ahead. And thanks for the love, Facts Porcupine. Thank you. But anyway, I was invited to a show called Conservative News Media, CNM Radio, with Robert Garding. He's here on Podbean as well. And I think I started with him in 2018. He invited me to be a part of his program, and I was there for I guess 7 years, 6 or 7 years, and he had a whole network over there, and of course he's no longer on Blog Talk because Blog Talk has shut down. But this is something that I like doing. Oh well, once again I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but after a while, I learned about the Word Faith movement in the churches, and that it is a false doctrine, just to say, to name it and claim it and everything. And I was under that system for about 25, 26 years. And when I started learning about the Word Faith, the learning about tithing and giving these manipulated offerings and shouting and all that and everything, I started to turn from that. And so I divided my show into two parts. One was still Black by Color only, and the other was Profit or Loss with a question mark. And the reason why I switched my show like that, I decided to put it all under one name, Truthsharks Radio. Of course, like I said, I like the truth and I like sharks. And that's why I came up with Truthsharks Radio. And when I learned of Blog Talk Radio closing and everything, I said, I still want to continue this. I was on Blog Talk Radio for, good gracious, 15 years. And I still wanted to continue this because this is something I like doing. It's an out for me. It's a way I can vent and let people know that there's this nondescript black man from Durham, North Carolina, who has something he would like to add to the fray too. Because a lot of times when we get our news or our commentary, we get it from people like the news reporters on TV or on talk radio or anything like that, and we hear these personalities like Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. We hear about all these people, but these are not the only people in this country of ours that has something to say. And I think there should be an out for the common citizens to voice their opinion or their point of view about what they see going on in this country. And that's one of the main reasons why I have this program. And basically, I do this because I want, well, in a way, I'm kind of upsetting the apple cart, because I don't know if you all know about the habits of the sockeye salmon. The sockeye salmon is born in a pool in fresh water, and then it makes its way down streams and into the rivers, and spends its time in the ocean. But after a while, it by instinct, it's like, okay, let me go back up the river to the place where I was born, so I can spawn, so I can reproduce. And when the salmon was a child, when it was a little fry, I think that's what they call a baby fish, fry, the current was going along, it followed the current to its place of destination. But once it got to its place of destination and it instinctually learns that it has to reproduce. It'll go upstream, and now this current is fighting against it, and there are a lot of mouths ready to snap them up. Bears and birds and people with fishing hooks and everything ready to snatch them up. And that's basically what I wanted to do as a black man. I don't like identifying myself as a black man. We live in this culture, though. We live in this culture where, black, you're black, and, that you got to follow the blackness and everything and stuff like that. I don't like following the rhetoric of liberal mainstream black America. Let me just say that. And, this has gotten me in trouble with a lot of people. And a lot of people say, well, you hate being black and you're Mr. Step It and Fetch It. You hate the black race and everything. And nobody tries to understand where I'm coming from when I do this. Okay. I don't hate being black, but, people act like they know you better than you know yourself. And they say, well, you hate being black. Some people gotten offended by the name of my show, Black by Color Only. They have gotten offended by that. Like, why you call your show Black by Color Only? You sound like you're confused. I say, well, you're the one that's confused, because I know why I named the show. And it's kind of interesting how I came up with that name, because in 1995, it was my 27th birthday, October the 16th, 1997. And of course, I remember this day because that's my birthday. But on that day, Louis Farrakhan had an event in Washington, D.C. in the mall called the Million Man March. And I posted my criticism in an op-ed in the local paper here in Durham, North Carolina. And I had a couple of people come up talking about, you say blacks are gullible and all this. And, and one guy actually said, Vincent says he's black, but apparently it's by color only. And I say, you know what? That would be a great name for a newsletter or a radio show or something like that. And it stewed in my mind for those years from 95 till 2009. I guess I think that's 14 years. And when I discovered Blog Talk Radio, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to name my show, Black by Color Only. And I'm still going to have a show called Black by Color Only, but it's going to be under the Truthsharks moniker. As you can see, my logo, I had someone professionally do a logo a couple of years ago, and I think it's a pretty nice logo, to be honest with you. And this is the WVEB presentation of Truthsharks Radio. And I haven't decided how I'm going to do the shows, because I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do Black by Color Only, and I'm going to do Profit or Loss. And when I mention the name Profit or Loss, I'm not talking about profit like, you put in some time and then you make a profit. I'm using a spin of words. Instead of PROFIT, it's going to be PROPHET. Profit or Loss. And I came up with that name because I remember listening to a preacher some 30 years ago. And, he was saying, some of you all don't know whether a man is a prophet or a loss. And I said, you know what? That's an interesting spin of words. And I said, that's what I'm going to name my other show, Profit or Loss. And that's where I'm going to talk about some of the bad doctrines that is being passed on in our mainstream churches today. It's not going to be about a exposure of the different cults out there, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Roman Catholics, the Mormons, or anything like that. I may talk about them, and I may do a show exclusively about those groups, but that's not what the show is going to be about. It's going to be about exposing the Word Faith movement, the NAR, and all this, because a lot of that needs to be taken care of. A lot of that needs to be dealt with, And as a Christian, these things have to be brought to the forefront. Um, One thing that I notice in the churches, in the churches of today, is that a lot of churches try to take uh, worldly tactics and apply it to church because what they're concerned about is getting people inside their churches. We need to increase the membership in our churches. And they say, we, how do the rap artists do it? How does this one do it? How does this one do it? And they think that if they have a lot of numbers come to their churches, they think that that is showing that God is really blessing them. But the Bible says straight is the gate that leads to destruction, which means it's a narrow gate. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm messing the scriptures all up. I told you all I haven't refined my show, and everything. Trying to spend all this time trying to get it ready. The Bible says, "Wide is the way that leads to destruction." And what that's saying is that's the way that a lot of people are going to go. But straight is the gate that leads to eternal life. And I'm not saying that verbatim, but what that scripture is saying is that a lot of people are going to follow the way of destruction. But a very few are going to find the truth, and they're going to follow the path of truth. And there's a very interesting proverb I heard from somebody. It said, if you want to go nowhere fast, just follow the crowd. Just follow the crowd, because wherever the crowd is going, and people think because a whole lot of people are going in this direction that must be the right way to go. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions in the world today. I don't care if you hold the truth. If you know you have the truth and you're surrounded by 2 million people that don't know the truth, you're surrounded by them. They got. Just because you're the only one with the truth does not mean that those 2 million people who don't have the truth, that they are the right people, that they have the right point of view. Of course, if you're holding the truth, you have the right point of view. But just because someone calls a four-legged animal that happens to be an armadillo, you know that it's an armadillo. But you got 2 million people surrounding you saying, no, that is a turtle. Look, it's got a shell, and that's a turtle. But no, you stick to your guns and you say, I know that that's an armadillo. And no matter what, oh, you think you know everything. You do. That is a turtle. I can tell you it's a turtle. But see, just because a majority of people have a point of view, that does not mean that their point of view is the right point of view. And that's a big misconception. That's the reason why I don't like to identify with liberal mainstream Black America. Because people think that because you're Black, that you're supposed to follow along with the point of view of most Black people. And usually that's a woke centered type of point of view. The civil rights activists and all those, that come in and talk about, we Black people. I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean, we Black people? We Black people go through this. We Black people, we suffer every day. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I'm not going through what you're saying we're going through. You need to speak for yourself. But even when you speak for yourself, you're really lying to yourself, because you're sitting there saying, we Black people, we're suffering every day and everything. No, we're not, because you got Black people that are not suffering. You got Black people who are living in the nice houses. They made it up in their mind, said, I'm going to make myself something. And they went out there, they worked hard, and now they are walking in success. Now, to hear the civil rights activists push this point, the wokeists, they will say, well, if you're Black, you got to work 10 times as hard as the white man to get where you're at today. No, you don't. You don't have to work 10 times. I mean, what do you base that on? What are you basing that on, that you got to work 10 times as hard as the white man? And I listen to these people, they say, the U.S. is a bastion of white supremacy and everything. And let me tell you all something about that term, white supremacy. If you are using that term, white supremacy, you're basically saying that you are inferior to white people. That's basically what you're saying. And I'm sitting here today, and I'm going to let you know I'm not inferior to anyone. Well, the white man ain't gonna let you this. He can fight all he wants to, but if I had enough determination, ain't no white man gonna stop me. And by the way, it's not the white man that tries to hold me back in my life. It's been black people. It has been black people. Black people have been my worst bullies. Black people have been the ones that talk about my skin color. Black people talk about how I look. When I was growing up, it was black people talking about my nappy hair, which I do have nappy hair. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's why every 2 weeks or so, my wife, we get in the bathroom and she shaves that mess off, because this hair, when it gets thick and woolly, boy, it is hard to manage. So if you ever see me and whatever, most of the time I'm gonna have short hair, because this little rug on top of my head, it gets unmanageable, I tell you. But getting back to what I was saying, it's been the black people that have really, even, family members, so-called friends, of course, enemies. They've been the main ones to hold me back in a lot of stuff. And so when they talk about the white man, I don't know what they're talking about. Yes, I've had white men call me nigger. I've had them call me the nigger word. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that word. But, this is my show, and I'm going to say it. Nigger, And the only reason why, when people call it the N word, because it tends to offend some people. Well, when I was growing up, most of the people that I heard the word nigger from was other black people. Go to any 70s show like Sanford and Son or the Jeffersons or those black shows. You will hear that word a lot. But now all of a sudden it's offensive. It's offensive. And I do believe that the word nigger was offensive when it was, first coined and whatever. It doesn't offend me, but I don't use it to refer to another black person. I don't think it's a nice term to use. But I don't think we should, treat it like it's an actual cuss word. It's not a nice word to use, but I don't think we should treat it as a cuss word. And the reason why you go on YouTube or any other place, excuse me, go to YouTube or any other place and they'll block it off because it's offensive, because we become a culture of feelings. If it doesn't feel right, then it's offensive, and it shouldn't, it shouldn't be tolerated, you know. Of course, the same people that say that, they say they're all about tolerance. Really. And I don't care. I don't. And if a white person happens to say nigga, just as a reference, like, yeah, I was listening to this guy and he called this other guy a nigga. All of a sudden, oh, he's a racist. No, he's just using that term. He heard what somebody else said. And he's just using it in a, he's not using it in an offensive way. He's not calling black people nigga. He's just hearing. He just heard. He's just repeating what he's heard. Now, I'm not saying that every time you hear a certain word that you need to repeat it, because one thing I will tell you all, one thing you will not hear me do on this program is cuss. Not the S word. You will not hear me use the S word, the F word, the B word, GD, the P word, the D word. Even some of those low key cuss words, like HE double hockey sticks. You're not going to hear me use those terms on this program because I don't cuss. Now, when I was a kid, when I was coming up as a teenager, oh man, all bets were off. I used to cuss with the best of them. Couldn't fight nobody, couldn't beat nobody, but oh boy, I could cuss up a storm. But once I became a born again Christian, see, this is where the part comes in where I really took it seriously. Within 2 years, my cussing was cut out significantly. And if anybody comes up to you and they say, have you ever heard Vincent cuss? If they say yes, they're lying to you. I can guarantee you that. Because this man right here does not like to cuss. I don't like to use the cuss words. My wife doesn't cuss. I don't like to hear cussing. And one thing that saddens me is in this world, it's gotten to the point where even watching a video on the internet, and it's something very informative, but someone will come off with them cuss words and whatever. And I don't like the cussing. And just to let you all know, if you're listening in, maybe in the archives or you're listening in live or whatever, um, whenever you come and you make a comment on this show, whether it's in the chat, in the chat room, or whether you're calling in or whatever to make a comment, please do not cuss. Now, this show isn't typically made for kids. It's not typically made for kids, but I want this to be a respectable show. Don't come on here being disrespectful to other guests. Yes, and if you use the word nigga to refer to somebody else, yes, I consider that disrespectful, even though that term doesn't offend me, but you're using it in a derogatory way. And those of you all who know me from Blog Talk Radio, I used to have this. Tornado siren on my show, like when someone would call in and I would be warning them about, the cussing and whatever and disrespecting. And I would, do the tornado warning. And then I would do a sound of fruit bats flying, because I called it my fruit bat alarm. And anyone who just wants to come in here and disrupt the program and just want to talk all over people and everything, I call them fruit bats. They don't want to listen. They want to. They use gaslighting as a way to criticize you and whatever. And they really have no facts. They think they know you better than you know yourself. They don't use logic in their arguments. They really don't. They really don't know what they're talking about. And they just come on here and they just want to disrupt and everything. I call those people fruit bats. And and I'm gonna bring that over here as well. I'm gonna bring that fruit bat alarm and everything over here as well. I'm still trying to get my show up to speed to where I want it to be and everything. But I'm a bring that over here. You're gonna hear the fruit bat alarm. I'm gonna hit the alarm, and and you're gonna hear the fruit bats flying around. But I really appreciate being here on Podbean, able to do an on-air show. And like I said, most of the recordings are just going to be simple recordings, and every now and then I might do a live show once a week. But the recordings, I'll probably do those, I don't know, several times a week. Like I said, I got to get everything, refined to the way that I can get this thing moving smoothly and whatever. And one thing I understand too on this program is that I'm going to bring up controversial subjects. I'm going to bring them up. And you might be a person who doesn't agree. I mean, you might be a person, you and I see eye to eye on most subjects or whatever. But one thing I understand is that no two people actually agree on every single thing 100%. My wife and I, we agree on most points of on most points and everything, but we don't agree on every single thing, and that's okay. That's okay. I have no problem if you agree with me or you disagree with me. I have no problem with that. And if you want to continue believing the lie, like the Bible says, if a man wants to be ignorant, let him be ignorant. But I have no problem with you disagreeing with me. That's not the problem. The problem is when you bring the disrespect with that disagreement. Then now you're reaching. And see, one thing I understand is that we all have opinions. We all have points of view. And nothing wrong with having an opinion. An opinion is something that could be right or it could be wrong. And I believe that God gives us opinions. I really do. And if anyone can show me that he doesn't, then I will, recant and change my statement. But I really do believe God gives us the capacity to think and to go through a thought process to discover the truth. And having an opinion is a beginning in that. You come up with an opinion, say, okay, I got this opinion, and opinion can be right or wrong. Now, if you discover that your opinion is right, then you have the confirmation. Okay, then this is the truth. But if your opinion is wrong, then you need to drop your opinion and cling to the truth. But what a lot of people do, because they've been taught something for so long and they believed it to be the truth when it really wasn't. It wasn't a truth, it was an opinion. When the light of the truth shines on that opinion, they don't want to follow the truth. They want to get away from the light. How dare you show me the truth that my opinion was wrong? It's almost like a deep-seated pride in certain people. They feel that pride. But you have to drop your opinion to follow the truth. And when you don't drop your opinion to follow the truth, that's what you call cognitive dissonance. It's continuing to believe something even when the truth has been revealed about that thing. Like if you can look up in the sky and you say, oh, the sky is blue. Someone tells you the sky is blue, but someone says, no, the sky is red. No, look up there. The sky is red. The person who can look up in the sky see that and sees that it is blue, but still insists that it is red. That person is going through what you call cognitive dissonance. And when you come across a person with cognitive dissonance, it's really nothing you can do. You can't say anything, they're not going to listen. They'll go with the insults and the ad hominems and the character assassinations. They'll gaslight you. I see it all the time. At the time of this broadcast, we just inaugurated Donald Trump as our president. And a lot of people are upset that Donald Trump is our president. A lot of people are upset. Some people say they're scared. Oh, I'm scared. I don't know who that lady was. The lady bishop. Trump was sitting in the service and she came out. She said, "Trump, we're scared. You know, I'm a lesbian and we're scared. What are you scared of?" That's the thing about it. I'm like, what are you all scared of? Because you all heard someone fed some garbage to you that Donald Trump hates gay people, that Donald Trump hates black people, that Donald Trump hates the transgenders, and that he's going to do something very nefarious to them. You know, you all heard that Trump is Hitler, which is ridiculous, that he's a fascist. I don't remember Trump loading thousands of people into gas rooms and ovens and prisons and executing them. So where people come off that Donald Trump is Hitler, I don't know where they get that from, but people believe it, and you can point it out. You can point out the good things that Donald Trump is doing. They don't want to believe it. When Donald Trump first became president, and the economy started to recover, started to heal and whatever, people wanted to say, oh, that's because of Barack Obama. No, it wasn't because of Barack Obama. If it was because of Barack Obama, this would have happened during his 2 terms. And they said he inherited the economy from Barack Obama. No, he didn't. He took the economy from Barack Obama and turned it on its head. And then when Joe Biden came in, into play. He went about getting rid of all the laws that all of Donald Trump's accomplishments, and our economy started to tank again. But nobody want to see that. We orange man bad, orange man bad. But that's where but that's a good case. That's a great case of gaslighting and cognitive dissonance. Real good case of it. And now, people are responding because they have believed this thing about Donald Trump for so long, they can't believe anything else. And our news media is responsible. Our news media is responsible for why people think the way they do about Donald Trump today. And I was telling my wife earlier that if I was Donald Trump, I would sue the pants off a lot of people, because they have defamed his character to the point where he will never recover it. He will never recover from this. He'll still fight. He'll still fight in certain areas and whatever, and he should. But you know what? They damage his reputation forever. And our news media is to blame. People think when they're watching CNN and ABC and CBS and NBC, all of these major news conglomerates, they think they're getting the information that they need to know about the world, because, see, the news media really preys on those who are intellectually and mentally lazy. They love those type of people. They love them because when you're mentally and intellectually lazy, then, someone can come in and tell you anything and you'll just believe it off the bat, because basically you're doing the thinking for them. You're basically telling them, hey, you don't need to read or study or anything. Just let me feed you a bunch of crap. Let me feed you a bunch of crap and you'll believe it. And hey, we'll do your thinking for you. And sad to say, a lot of people, that's what they do. They let the news media do the thinking for them. They come home from work, take off their jacket, throw it on the couch, turn on the TV, and watch the news. And they think they're getting all the information they need about what's happening in the world. And they don't understand that the news reporters, that is their job, to report the news. They're not there to report the truth. What they do, they take a 30-minute interview and they'll snip here, they'll cut there, they'll edit there, here a little, there a little, and then they put it all in a nice little package. And then they wrap it up and put a bow on top of it, and then they present it to you because they want you to think a certain way. Because if they can get you to think a certain way, they can get you to react a certain way. And once they get you to react the way that they want you to, oh, their ratings go up. And you don't realize that you're being used by the news media. And they're trying to get a reaction out of you. That's why a lot of times when you see these news stories, you believe one thing, but you don't understand that some details have been left out of the story that you have heard. That's why we had this Michael Brown and George Floyd and Trayvon Martin fiascos. We're just waiting for the next so-called black martyr to be sacrificed, and we'll all go out there. The news media will play it to the hilt. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, let's get these people riled up." That is their job. But see, you got to understand you have a job that you need to go out there. You need to research, and it really doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't. I mean, heck, we got the internet today. But you know what a lot of people do, and I know this for sure. I know this for sure because someone that I know, I tried to direct this person to a book, and this person said, I don't want to read that because it's written by a conservative. I actually had someone say that. It's written by a conservative. I don't want to, because this person had been told that conservatives hate black people. They're white supremacists. And that's all they care about. All they care about is supporting the white man, protecting the white man. That's all concern. And so this person said, I don't want to read that book because it's written by a conservative. Now that is the essence. And I don't mean to offend anybody by this, but that is the essence of stupidity. Because, this person, look, I got several books written by people I don't agree with. Because I want to see what the other side is thinking too. But if you're saying, hey, and I'm talking about both sides do it. Both sides do this. Whether you're conservative, you say I don't want to read that book because it's written by a liberal, or if you're a liberal and you say I don't want to read this because it's written by a conservative, both of you all are stupid. Both of you are. But I see this more along liberal lines a lot more than I do conservative lines. See it a lot more among liberals. I don't want to read this. I don't want to watch this because those are conservatives. Well, then you're denying yourself a good piece of information that you could be getting, but because it is written by somebody or is presented by somebody or broadcast by somebody that you don't like, and you just totally, hey, That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. If I don't get that information, I don't care because that person is a conservative. You're stupid. And yes, if you're a conservative and you don't want to read anything by a liberal, you're stupid too. And see, that's why I tell people I do not like politics. Because politics, all it does is seek to divide. There's a reason why politics and poison begin with the same letter of the alphabet, because I believe they are one and the same. Politics is poison. Basically, when you're political, you're saying, okay, I need to take a side here. So I'm going to take this side. And anybody who doesn't agree with the side that I take, I don't want anything to do with them. No, you don't agree with my side. So, now I'm not talking about when you know that something to be the truth. I'm not saying that. If you know something to be the truth, by all means, stick to the truth. But if it's something that's just a point of view or someone's opinion or something like that, and you say, "No, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to listen to that," then you're stupid. And to be honest with you all, I do not like to use the word stupid because it was a word that was used in reference to me when I was a kid by my parents. And I really don't like using that word, but it's a hard hitting word, and that's the reason why I use it in this capacity. It's a very hard hitting word. It's not cussing or anything like that. It's a very hard hitting word, and it's used to jar you awake, basically. But some people tend to take some words and they use them out of place and whatever. That's why I don't like using the word, but it does become necessary. And that's basically what I want this show to be about. I'm not as informed. I'm still learning like everybody else is, I'm still learning. People, most people, they'll say, "Oh, Vincent, you're smart. You're smart. You're smart." I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good, but I'm still learning. I'm 56 years old, and the older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know. What I know right now, people call me smart and all that and everything. But what I know right now is only a tip of the iceberg. It's only a tip of the iceberg. And when you come here and you interact with me, what you're going to get from this host is not a person who thinks he knows everything. And I've been accused of that too. You think you know everything. No, I don't think I know everything. But what I do know, that's what I'm going to push. If I know something to be the truth, that's what I'm going to push. Now, if I have an opinion about something and someone says, "Hey, Vince, hey, I know you believe this and everything, but I got some information here." And I look at that information and I'm like, "Oh, dog, I've been believing this for how many years? I've been believing this for 3 decades." Well, then I need to stop believing that and start holding on to the truth. That's the main reason why I got out of the word faith movement. I came up in a church, church was dynamic. Pastor had a lot of charisma. And they would say certain things like, "The Bible says that you are to call those things which be not as though they were." And some people actually believe that the Bible says that. Some people actually believe that the Bible says that you are to call those things which be not as though they were. But there's no scripture saying that as a Christian that I am to call those things which be not as though they were. And they use that to say that if there is something you want, like if you see a Cadillac or you see a piece of land and you want it, they tell you, "Hey, just call those things which be not as though they were." Just believe God for it, and eventually God will let you have it. But you got to put some corresponding action to it as well. Like they'll push this thing called sowing a seed. And when you go to a church and you hear the term sowing a seed, what they're telling you is you need to give some money. You want God to bless you? Pay some money. Oh, we're going to talk about this on Profit or Loss. We're going to talk about this. But this is where I came up. I was originally a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, and I, learned some things about the Roman Catholics. I got out of that, and it kind of bothers me a lot when people when they talk about Christianity. They have a picture of a priest with a 12-pound cross and doing a sign of the cross and bless you, my son, and all that. And that's not Christianity. And I know that's going to offend a lot of people. I know that's controversial, but the truth must be told. If you compare Catholic doctrine with the Bible, there is no comparison. Catholic doctrine is not Christian doctrine. But anyway, I left the Catholic Church and went to this Word Faith Church. They talked about speaking in tongues and you had to be slain in the spirit and all that stuff. And that's what I was brought up in. And for years, like I said, 2.5 decades, I followed along with this rhetoric until I came across a video on YouTube. And when I saw that video, it opened my eyes to the truth. I was like, wait a minute. You mean I don't have to give 10% of my income to a church? When you go to a lot of these charismatic churches, they will tell you are supposed to give 10% of your income. They call it a tithe. But the Bible doesn't say you're supposed to give 10% of your income to a church. And they will bring up Malachi, the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. Will a man rob God? You've robbed me in tithes and offerings. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you're supposed to give a tithe or give sacrificially. Now, don't get me wrong on that, because a lot of people, they will hear me say this, and I need to put out a disclaimer. I am not saying you are not supposed to give to your church. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying you should not be manipulated into parting with your hard-earned dollars. That's what I am saying. I'm not saying that, and a lot of times when you say stuff like this, they'll say, "Oh, you just jealous. I'm not jealous of you at all." Look, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, 750 square feet. And you know what? I thank God that I got a roof over my head. I got clothes to wear. I got food to eat. I got a wife that loves me. I got several hundred roaches that love me too, but I digress. But what I'm saying, I am thankful for what I do have. Got a roof over my head. I got clothes to wear. I have a vehicle to drive. I got a job to go to. And if and I do desire a house, don't get me wrong. I really do desire a house. But if I never get that house and I stand before God, I'm not going to feel like I've been cheated. Because what I can get in glory, what I can get in heaven, supersedes anything that I can get on this earth. That's why I don't go after the Corvettes. I believe in God for a Bugatti. I believe in God for a mansion. I believe in God for 10 acres of land. I used to live in this house in Fort Washington, Maryland. Used to be called Oxon Hill. It's I'm pretty sure this county right outside of Washington D.C. That house was just under 2,000 square feet. My mom and dad, we moved in there in 1976. House, we were the first ones to get that house. I remember as a kid we would go and watch them build the house and everything. I remember as a kid. And when that house was finished, it sat on 1/3 of an acre of land. Now, let me tell you something. That might not sound like a lot to you, but if I were to show you this house, you'd be like, wow, that's a lot of land right there. Matter of fact, the land that we sat on was so big, they were thinking about putting another lot on that land and building another house, but they never did it, so it became our property. And we had probably the biggest yard on that street, Ramsgate, Oxon Hill, Maryland, Fort Washington. Well, it was Oxon Hill, but now it's Fort Washington, in a community called Apple Grove. And, about a year after we moved into that house, my dad got together with some guys and they put a huge patio in the back. Huge patio. Had lights built into the walls and everything. Oh, it was nice. And whenever they would have a block party, guess whose house they would come to? Ours. Because we had the space, had the patio. I forget how many houses were on our street. I think it was 20 houses. And they would come to our house for the block party. And right beside our house was a road that ran perpendicular to the road we lived on. And not a lot of traffic came through that road. Matter of fact, it was just one house on that road. And we used to play touch football on that road. Had some epic football games on that road. But I say all that to say this, when you hear these preachers coming up and they talk about, you need to believe God for big things and whatever, you know, they're manipulating you. I remember listening to watching a video by Juanita Bynum. This was probably one of the things that got me out of the word faith movement. I was watching a video, and folks, yes, I'm calling out people's names. I'm calling out people's names. But Juanita Bynum, she was having some kind of conference and whatever, and she was getting on her audience for when they sign up for this conference. Of course, these conferences are big money makers for the word faith preachers. You got to pay big money. Some of these conferences, $1,500, $2,000. How in the world to hear the word of God? But anyway, she's getting on them talking about, you need to get you a name brand pen other than Bic. Because you can buy a big pen, maybe 10 of them for $1. I don't know how much it is, but it's a cheap pen. And she said you need to get you a name brand pen other than Bic, because Bic is the common man's pen. You know, your pen, what you write with, your writing instrument determines where you're headed. She actually said this. And when God willing, I'll get that soundbite and I'll let you listen to it on a future show. But she said, if you're writing with a big pen, you're in a low grade. She said, see, when I write with my pen, I want people to know that there's something about me. And she said, I've spent as much as $5,000 for a pen. Folks, I am not making this up. Once I get that soundbite together, I'm going to let you listen to it. $5,000 for, and she said she uses that pen to sign off her $1 million transactions. Yeah, to sign off those transactions that were funded by people that she manipulated to give her money. See, we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the corruption in government. We're going to talk about the corruption in the churches. We're going to talk about the corruption in the black race. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about I'm going to talk, and yes, I'm going to bring up some controversial subjects. And I know there might be some people listening to me. They might not agree with me. They might be adamant against what I have to say on this program, but the truth needs to be revealed. It's time out for the truth tellers to be tiptoeing through the tulips like they're walking on eggshells. And you all, if y'all hear anything in the background, that's my wife. That's my wife. Love that girl. But anyway, it's time out for us to be hanging back in the corner like scared dogs because we're afraid of what people might say. We need to bring out the truth. The only way people are going to get the truth is that those of us who keep the truth hand it out to others. And yes, they might throw it back in your face. They might threaten your life. They might threaten you with harm in it, but you have to bring the truth. And that's why that's one of the main reasons why I call this True Sharks. So sharks in the water, buddy. You know, them lies out there in the water, you're going to get the sharks in the water. And that's why I do programs like this, because I want to get the truth out to the people. And like I said, I'm not no Rush Limbaugh or anything like that. I don't do this for an audience. I really don't. I don't do this for money or anything. You know, I've been falsely accused that the reason why I say what I do is because I'm being paid by white conservatives. No, in the 15, 16 years of me doing this, I have not received one thin red dime from anyone. And let me tell you something too. No one can come up to me and say, "Hey, Vincent, if you would stop saying what you're saying and start saying things a different way, I'll give you this amount of money." You're not going to buy me with money. The truth cannot be bought. You can offer me and say, "Vincent, you know what? I get what you're saying and everything, but if you would just change your rhetoric, if you would just change your speech to a way that's not so offensive, I'll give you $1,000,000. You can keep your $1,000,000. Now, some people, they'll be like, "Oh, I'll snap that right up." And they see that as being more, "Oh, someone giving you that money and you're not going to take it." No, I'm not going to take it. Because the truth is more valuable to me than anything else. The truth is more precious than gold. And see, one thing I understand about the truth is the hardest substance. You know, people talk about how hard a diamond is. Well, the truth is even harder than a diamond. You can't sand it down. You can't break off a piece and give it to some other people. You can't melt it. The truth stands on its own. When everything else collapses, when everything else is burned off, what you are left with is the truth. And like I said, the truth cannot be bought. You cannot offer me money. And see, when people say, "Oh, someone's paying you to do this," first of all, you're gaslighting. You don't even know what the deal is over here. I've had people accuse me of that. And when you tell them, they say, "No, you're being bought. You're being bought." No, I'm not being bought over here. No one is paying me to say anything. When I was with uh, conservative news media on Blog Talk Radio for those years, and let me give a shout out to Robert Garding for what he does over there. But when he invited me over to his page, He didn't say, okay, Vincent, this is what I want you to do. He didn't tell me anything. And I had enough respect to say, okay, I'm going to someone else's platform and I'm going to show them due respect. But the person already knew what I was about. So he wasn't about to tell me you need to change your rhetoric or anything like that. And he invited me onto his platform, and I said, okay, I'll be a part of your platform. And I just continued the way I had always been doing. I didn't change a thing. I didn't change a single thing. But, person came up and said, oh, you getting paid. I ain't getting paid nothing. And I don't do this to get paid. Now, if someone says, hey, Vincent, hey, uh, if you become a part of my platform or whatever, I'll be willing to pay you for your point of view. I'll be like, okay, well, just as long as I don't have to change anything or whatever, and let me be myself, I ain't got no problem with that. But that's not why I do this. I'm not trying to make it big, so to speak. That would be nice, if, and I, and anyone who knows me knows I don't do things to be seen. I'm not here to be seen and to become the next big radio broadcaster or anything like that. That's not why I do this. And the very people who say that about me, that's what they're doing. They're trying to get out there. Like I said a few years ago, this guy called me a black comfort dog for white conservatives, and he was bragging about how he's the first person that came up with that term, black comfort dog for white conservatives. And the way he was saying it, it sounded like he wanted it to hit the mainstream, so other people can use that term. I'm like, I don't care if he uses that term. You call me all you want to. It's not going to get me to change my point of view. I'm not intimidated by the name calling. And if you want to, if you want someone to be scared of you, my wife works at a daycare. She works with very small children. I'll have her round them up for you, and then you can have you a good old time, getting people scared, because you're not going to scare me here. All you're going to do is strengthen my resolve. That's all you're doing. You're just going to make me want to get out there that much more and push the truth. You can call me the sellout. You can call me the Oreo. You can call me Mr. Steppin' and Fetcher. You can call me Uncle Tom, Uncle Ruckus, all them cute little names that you all got right there. I'm not going to sit there and say, you know what? Too many people are coming up against me. I can't do this anymore. Nah, no, no, no. Heck no. Ain't happening. But like I said, I hope people get something out of what I do here, because I don't do this just to hear the sound of my voice. I want to get information out there, and eventually, I want to do this simultaneously on YouTube or Rumble or one of those video platforms. Like when I do a live or just a recording, I want to also do that on a video platform as well. You all get to see my extremely robust and handsome face. You're like, oh, that's a face I can put to. I can finally put a face to the voice. I've never been accused of really being handsome except for by my wife, and I don't. Like I said, I don't care. I do not care if you think I'm attractive or anything. I do not care, because I got a wife who loves me. So you're gonna miss me with that. And the thing about it is, when you show people you really don't care what they think, they still keep coming. And those are fruit bats. That's what I call them, fruit bats. Now, I will say this: if you come on here and you have a disagreement with me or anything, I'm not going to kick you off because you disagree with me. I'm going to kick you off because you're being disrespectful. I don't care about you disagreeing. Not at all. You disagree with someone, that's just a way that you can learn from somebody, you know. And just listen. Just listen. Listen to what I have to say. See, that's a problem in this world today because a lot of people, they're so caught up in their point of view, they're so caught up in their opinion that they don't want to listen because someone has taught them something for so many years. They don't want to listen when someone offers an alternating point of view. They don't want to listen. And see, the part I don't like is the disrespect. And you can call me thin skinned all you want to. You can say that all you want to. Oh, you're thin skinned. Okay, well, goodbye. It's not about me being thin skinned. See, one thing I understand is even though you have a different point of view, we're adults here. And if you want to be treated like an adult, then just be respectful. Act like an adult. But if you want to get into one of these little kindergarten sandbox sand slinging type of matches, then this is not the show for you. Sometimes people come to you with a question and you can tell by their attitude, and your attitude doesn't scare me, you know. Well, what do you think about this? I heard you say, well, yeah, you heard me say that. Yeah. I remember Candace Owens. She was on she was on some forum at a school, and this girl gets up and says, well, what do you have to say about the people who are offended by things you said and this and everything like this? And Candace Owens was like, good gracious, girl, sit down. I'm too pregnant for this. And that's how I am. Don't come here with your anger and everything. If you wanna have a conversation, yeah, we'll have a conversation. But if you want to and like I said before, I am not the type of person that thinks he knows everything. I don't. And if I don't know something, I'll be like, okay, well, I don't know about that. Well, you need to check it out. Okay, I will. Okay. I don't know everything. I got a bad case of the smarts. I understand that. I got a very bad case of the smarts. But one thing about me, I believe what makes me very intelligent is that I understand that no matter how smart I am never going to know everything. Some people don't understand that, and they just want to, they just want to ride with their own rhetoric and everything. But if you come here and you're disrespectful, you come in here cussing people out and calling them derogatory names and everything, you're going to have a very short time on this program. Because I'm not going to play with the beaver scat. You might be saying, beaver scat? What are you talking about? That's my cuss word. Beaver scat. There's another BS word that I don't use. That's my BS word, beaver scat. But, basically, I just did this show to welcome you all to this page, to this channel. I hope this leads to a long lasting relationship. And like I said, if you have any questions or whatever, I didn't put my my email or anything up here, but if you're listening in the archives or whatever, just pause it. You can catch me at truthsharkstv at gmail.com. Truthsharkstv at gmail.com. And you can, hit me up there. You can hit me up at True Sharks TV. I have a YouTube page Truthsharks TV. I got other pages. I have a Rumble page, and I'm going to get all that stuff to you eventually. I just wanted to launch this show today, just give you a little feel of the kind of person that I am. You know, I'm not a type of person that's going to try to give you a hard time or anything like that. No matter what you believe, you know. But like I said, when you come on here, just show respect, be respectful, and we'll have a good time. Now, if we leave and we still don't agree with each other's point of view, then so be it. So be it. But don't take my disagreement with your point of view as an insult. Don't take it personally. Because I'm not trying to be difficult. A lot of times people say, "Oh, you're just trying to be difficult." No, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just telling you. And if I know something to be the truth, I'm just gonna hold on to that thing like a leech on the butt of a cow. I'm gonna hold on to that thing. You're not gonna convince me anything different than the truth. If I know the truth about something, nah, you're not gonna convince me of something different. And that's the Christian in me. See, a lot of people, and I got a few more minutes, but that's the thing that really powers what I think is my Christianity. And a lot of people have this thing that Christianity is a cult, that is a man-made religion and whatever. That and I've heard so many times that it's the white man's religion, you know. But when people say things like that, they really don't know what a Christian really is. It lets me know they don't know what a Christian is. They say that Christians were the ones enslaving black people. No, they weren't. That Christians forced black people to become Christians. They forced them to be Christians. No one forced me to be a Christian. Being a Christian was my choice. No one at all forced me to be a Christian. And I'm going to tell you this too. I'm going to say this too. If you are encountering a Christian, you're encountering someone who calls themselves a Christian, and they're trying to force you to be a Christian, they're not a Christian, because Jesus didn't do that. See, a lot of times people look at the people who call themselves Christians and they look at their attitudes, but they don't look at Jesus. That's who you need to be looking at. Because I can tell you, if somebody is performing an act that is not Christian, that is not supported in the Word of God, which is the Holy Scriptures, the Bible, they can call themselves a Christian all they want to. And see, that's a problem with a lot of these denominations out here. They call themselves Christian. But see, Jesus said, you will know them by the fruit that they bear. You'll know them by the fruit that they bear. So if they calling themselves a Christian, but they don't have any corresponding fruit to go with it, then they're not a Christian. You call yourself a Christian and you still, they still see you in the nightclubs on Saturday night, playing around with the women, flirting with the women, getting drunk, cussing people out. That person is not a Christian. Yeah, but he says he's a Christian. Well, yeah, I can say I'm a Bugatti because I'm standing in a garage. But does that make me a Bugatti? No. And the same thing with people who call themselves Christians. And see, a lot of people they go by what someone says instead of by what someone does. And see, a lot of these people, they are not qualified to say what a Christian is or not. And see, where I get my Christianity from is from the Bible. And I know there are people out there say, well, the Bible says that God told the Israelis to murder people because they don't think like they do. And they were instructed to kill people who don't. Well, God gave them that instruction. God created the heavens and the earth. God knows what he's doing. And he used the Israelis or the Hebrews as an arm of his judgment. He didn't just say, "Oh, you come up on someone, they don't think like you, just kill them." He didn't say that. He said, "When you come into this land, I want you to drive out the inhabitants." The inhabitants were pagan. They didn't believe in God. They believed they created their gods out of wood and stone and metal. And God said, "I want this out of my land, and I want you to kill everybody, man, woman, and child." Now, if you got a problem with that, then you take it up with God. Now, me as a Christian, I'm not gonna see somebody. I'm not gonna see a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses knocking at my door, and I open the door and say, "Hey, just hold on right there," and I come out with a 38 and gun both of them down. That's not being a Christian. God did not just instruct us just to willy nilly kill off people because they don't think or believe like we do. That is not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But people have abused that name. They have used God's name in vain by saying that they're Christian, and they perform actions that are not Christian. And a lot of people, they look at it, they say, "Oh, those are them Christians, them Christians, them Christians." Nah, you don't know what a Christian is. And see, the world is already set against anything that calls itself Christianity. The world has already got its head set against that. And so anything that these people do, and they say they're doing it in the name of Jesus or in the name of God, and it's not Christian, people say, "Yeah, look at them Christians. See, I told you they're a bunch of phonies. I told you." But true Christians don't involve themselves in these acts that are unchristian. Like I said, when I became a Christian, I used to cuss like crazy. Almost every other word come out my mouth was a cuss word. That is, when I was around my buddies and stuff like that. Around my parents, nah. My parents probably would have ripped them words out of my throat. And every time I tried to cuss, you probably just hear silence. But I stopped cussing. Within 2 years, I had cut down significantly. And like I said, if anyone comes to you and says, "Hey, we heard Vincent cussing," they'll probably laugh at you. I was talking to one guy one time, and I told him that I used to cuss a lot and everything. And he looked at me. He said, "Vincent, I could never imagine that you ever cussed in your life, because God took that away from me. I don't cuss. Even when I'm at my angriest point, I do not cuss. My wife can tell you I do not cuss, and my wife, she probably worse than I am, because my wife don't ever cuss. I don't even think my wife ever cussed before she became a Christian. I'm not sure, but I don't know. She might not have. I might need to ask her about that. But like the Bible says, you shall know them by their fruit. And we're going to talk about all this. And once I get once I get the shows all lined up and everything, and you know, I'll probably be doing live shows every weekend until I get everything lined up. I'll probably still do the live shows, but I also want to do Black by Color only, and I also want to do Profit or Loss. And those won't be live; those will be recordings, and I'll probably put them here. Of course, I will put them here on Podbean, but of course, I'm going to go on YouTube and Rumble and places like that. But anyway, um, I want to thank you all if you stayed here till the end. Thank you all for coming here and listening to this nondescript black man from Durham, North Carolina, bloviate about his point of view and everything. And if you have any friends or whatever, and you think they need to hear this, then invite them to the show. But eventually I'm gonna get this stuff together, and how you can contact me and everything. But you all take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. This is Vincent E. Brown. I am signing off. And until the next time, I'll see you on the rebound. You are listening to WVEB Truthsharks Radio.